Sometimes you hear something that makes you stop and think, no, that can't be right. For Piper, it was a doctor telling her that her son just needed a spanking. In that moment, she knew she had to find another way. What she did next changed everything. She went back to school, started over, and discovered tools that helped her son thrive and eventually helped hundreds of other families too. This is a story about trusting your gut, choosing hope, and finding strength that you didn't know you had.
Son laid on the floor. The neurologist looked at him and goes, I think he just needs a good spanking.
That's really helpful. Yeah.
That was the life shift. That was the catalyst for me saying, no,
Yeah.
that is not helpful. I am not spanking a child who simply just cannot control his bodily movements. I am going to go back to school and relearn everything I thought I knew about health and wellness to try and help this kid because after eight prescriptions, 10 doctors, nothing was working. I had to make the shift.
I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that have changed lives forever. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Life Shift podcast. I am here with Piper. Hello, Piper.
Hello, Matt. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm going to say that. I'm not going to say good because I was conditioned to do that growing up, but today was a little stressful, but that's okay. I'm allowed to have those days, and finally in my 40s I allow myself to just acknowledge it and move through it. And how are you?
I am well, and I totally agree with you. We all have those days, but today has actually been a great day for me.
I love it. And now we're capping it off with this conversation, which the Life Shift podcast is like something I couldn't have imagined being this age and healing in ways that I didn't know I still needed to heal. And it's really just taught me the power of story on a much deeper level than I ever imagined. So it's just a joy to have these conversations, even the hard conversations, because when I was 8, my dad had to sit me down with probably the hardest conversation of my life to tell me that my mom had been killed in a motorcycle accident. And at that moment, I mean, it was my parents were divorced. My dad lived in Georgia. I lived with my mom full time in Massachusetts. I was visiting my father, and it was like summer break. And at that moment, like everything that I knew about my everyday life was no longer possible. I was going to have to leave the house that I was comfortable in. I was going to have to move to a new state with a parent that I didn't see very often, who was also wildly grieving without showing it. And I saw the people around me that it was like very apparent that they didn't know what they were doing grieving wise. And so they were like, Matt needs to be happy. He needs to grow up happy. And I was like, okay, my responsibility to show everyone that I am okay. So I just pushed down the grief. It took me 20 plus years to feel like I had fully processed my mom's death. So it's really messy. But while I was in that messy couple decades, I always wondered, do other people have these line in the sand moments? Yes, they do. Many of them. I was like, wow, now I can have this conversation with so many people. And it's crazy to me how different everyone's stories are, yet the emotions and the feelings and the resilience and all these things are so common across all of these stories. So that's a little bit about the Life Shift podcast, but I'm just so looking forward to your conversation, which has elements of things that are really hard, but also probably elements of resilience and power.
For sure. We're going to have a good time talking about all of this today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, I am looking forward to it as well. And before we get into your specific story, maybe you can tell us who Piper is in 2025. Like, how do you identify? How do you show up in the world these days?
Yeah. It's amazing that we wait until our 40s to start this healing journey. It's crazy to me, but I have absolutely spent the last couple of years really working hard on my own life and my own trauma and getting me to this space. So I am a what I consider mom in transition, meaning I have 2 adult children now. My youngest just turned 18. Being able to release them out into the world as real human adults is quite a bit challenging. And there's so many changes that you have to make going from mom of kids to mom of adults. I am a business owner with a heart for helping others and really just seeing the hurt and sadness and hopelessness in other parents, similar to what I had experienced. And so I'm a business owner with heart, willing to hold hands, big dreams to, grow my business and work with more people throughout the world. I'm a wife, I'm a dog lover, and I am absolutely 1,000,000% different than the person I was 5 or 10 years ago.
Really? Well, and the way you describe your journey, not the mom part and not the parent part, but the way you describe how your experience brought you to this purpose-filled mission or goal feels very similar to me. Feels like this is what that kind of brought me to the life shift years and years and years later, but very fulfilling and probably is such a fuel for you, as exhausting as a lot of that must be. I bet it's also this fuel in you or this fire in you.
It absolutely is a fuel and a fire for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I am looking forward to hearing how that story unfolds. So I'd love for you to kind of paint the picture of your life leading up to this life shift moment. And you can go back as far as you need to give some color to that before version that was 1,000,000,000% different.
Yeah, and I really go back to so much of my very early childhood here because I feel like so much of the trauma that I experienced really influenced how I show up now in my life and what shaped me as a person. So I have said this to other people and they were like, how do you so casually talk about this, leading up to whatever we're discussing? And, I was molested and tortured by a family member when I was 3. So between the ages of 3 and 7, never told anybody. Like my mom did not find out that I went through this situation until I was 22 and about to get married. And she was like, I'm going to invite this person to your wedding. And I was like, you absolutely are not. Like, this is what happened. So it definitely shaped me into this nervous, anxious, fearful person, very untrusting of other people because, someone that I really love and trusted did these unspeakable things to me. And I spent so much of my life not trusting them. But I was also a hard worker. I
Probably
didn't
because of that.
yeah, I really was. I felt like and I still feel like I always had and have something to prove to somebody, whoever whoever that may be out there in the world. Good student, very quiet. I didn't want people looking at me. I didn't want to draw attention to myself, but always that driven person, that go-getter. I started running silly little businesses when I was, in 4th grade, selling blow pops for a quarter. And I, started doing these little businesses when I was little, making money, which is odd for me because I didn't want people looking at me, but I loved to perform. So I would sell tickets to my parents and our family members. Hey, come watch me do this, whatever ridiculous dance it was at the time. I went to high school. I was the captain of my high school gymnastics team, just hard work, proving, hey, I can do this. I can do hard things. I can do these things. But I had always dreamed of being a fashion designer. I wanted to have these amazing fashions that were going to go down the runway. And I was making my own clothes in high school. I was designing and sending in entries to whatever fashion contest of the moment there was. And I just had big dreams to be a fashion designer. So, of course, when I went to college, I got my degree in fashion design and I worked in the fashion industry as a designer, a buyer, a marketer, and a fit model. And mind you, I am a small woman. So, fit model was really for the fit of the clothes. It wasn't because I looked like a good hanger, because I do not look like a good hanger. But I worked in the fashion industry and I decided how much I hated it. I hated it. It was awful. It was
What
not
did
my
you hate
dream come
about it?
true.
It just wasn't it just because you hyped it up so much in your head probably, and then you saw the realities of it?
Absolutely. I thought that it was this glamorous, I'm going to sit in my studio and design and it's going to be glamorous. And it absolutely wasn't. I mean, when you are designing for, a denim manufacturer, it's like you have corporate companies that are like, this is what we want, this is how it needs to look. And so there was no imagination to it. There was no creative spark to it. And I was like, this is not what I imagined at all.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting. And I'm so sorry that you went through that as a child. And even more sorry that you didn't have a or didn't feel comfortable enough to share that with others. And I always think of myself in that age when my mom died, like I didn't have that either. Do you feel like holding that in for so long created this wanted to be successful kind of person?
I think on some level it did, but I think on another level it was like I didn't want to share that information. I was embarrassed. It felt shameful. And so, I think carrying something like that kind of shame with you like most of your life really has an impact. And yes, it may make you, more driven or something like that, but I feel like there was so much shame behind it at the time.
Yeah, that's so challenging because there should be zero shame on your behalf because none of that was your fault and totally 100% of it was the other person's fault. I just always think of these little kids who can't share it because they feel that way. And for me, it's like I just became a perfectionist because of the fear of abandonment, like in my situation. And a lot of that was because I didn't feel like anyone was ready to hear how sad I was or how broken I was. I just had to look like I was happy and fine and surviving that. So I know all of my achievements up until maybe 40 were based in like, oh, I need to be good at all of this or my dad's going to leave. He would never have left, but I didn't get to express it.
Yeah. And I think for me, part of that is if I could just do it myself, that was my safe space. I didn't have to rely on anyone else. I didn't have to trust anyone else. If I could do it and be powerful and successful in it myself, I didn't have to rely on anybody else and I
Mm,
didn't have to trust them.
yeah. Which, I mean, to me, kind of sounds like a kid version not trusting being able to share that story because of the shame that you would have got kind of parallels. I don't mean to put this on you either. Just kind of thinking because I didn't think about these things for so long in my life to like reflect on, oh, that's probably why I did that, and it's really interesting to think of. But yeah, I don't think you're the only person to dream of this career to be like the next, even though he wasn't even born yet, maybe Christian Siriano or something like that, right? You wanted to be that kind of designer, and you ended up just kind of on the conveyor belt of what a career looks like in kind of any industry. I think lots of people glamorize those things, and then you're like, oh, is this it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it was. It was like,
And all
oh,
of your training was in there, right? Like, so that was like your whole identity was wrapped up into this. True.
it was. It was really wrapped up. It was all of these things I was doing, and I was just going to go out and prove to the world that I was going to be this amazing fashion designer. And it was like somebody, putting a pin in a balloon. It was like, slowly somebody let that air out. I was like, this is just not what I imagined, and it wasn't for me. And that company, surprisingly enough, went out of business. And they didn't go out of business. They outsourced to China. I wasn't moving to China, so I really started to look at what my other friends and colleagues were doing. And, I had some friends working in a nonprofit, and I called them up and said, I think I want to do something helping other people. And so I actually spent 5 years working for the local American Red Cross doing public relations and marketing and event planning. And it, that way, I got pregnant and I had 2 kids while I worked for the Red Cross, but that sent me down a totally different trajectory.
Yeah. Well, I think becoming a mother, just in general, will shift someone's life completely. So how did you find that to be different for you?
It completely shifted my entire life to be the person that I am today. So, my oldest son was, I don't want to say complicated because he wasn't complicated, but we had complications from the beginning. Like, I'm small, he was stuck under my ribs. I had to have a C-section to have him, like 3 people remove him to get him out. He had low blood sugar when he was born, and they gave him sugar water. He had to be under the bilirubin lights. I mean, it was just all of these kinds of things where he had reflux, was allergic to dairy. It was like not what you expect when you have a baby and you are like, I'm going to have this sweet little baby
Yeah.
and it's going to be,
Totally
no, it
crush
was
that.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like, everything that could go wrong went wrong, or there was, somebody threw a wrench in the
Yeah.
process for sure.
Yeah. And then I mean, but I would imagine, okay, I'm not going to imagine. Did you assume any kind of like, I think there's a lot of people that might go, oh, what did I do? Or was there any of that element where because of the shame that you hid as a child, was there anything that you're like, ooh,
Not right away, but, we started to see these symptoms with him kind of sneak in. So, he's 2 or 3 and his behavior was just Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. One second he was great, and the next second it was like, who is this beast and what is happening? And so I started to question, and I would go to the pediatrician and she's like, it's just boys. That's normal behavior. Or, he would bite
thanks.
somebody. It's just boys. It's normal
That's so
behavior.
helpful. Thank you, doctor.
Yeah. What should I do here? And then about the time he was 4, he started doing this like rapid eye blinking. And I was like, what is going on? So I took him to the doctor and it's just allergies, give him some Zyrtec. And so we spent a little time with Zyrtec, which made his behaviors 9,000 times worse.
Great. It's
Yeah, it
helpful.
was a fun time. I mean, great kid, but it's like it was this. We'd figure something out, and then something else would happen. And we're like, what's going on here? And so, about the time he was 6, we had gone on this amazing, fun family trip to Disneyland. So he was 6, my other son was 4. It was like the perfect time to go to Disneyland. We had a blast. Like we ate donuts and drank chocolate milk, and we had so much fun. But we got home, and the next day he was jerking his neck and clapping his hands and blinking rapidly, and he could not control his bodily movements. And we were terrified as
Yeah.
parents. We were Googling, we were making videos, we were calling the pediatrician, getting in as soon as we possibly could. And we were really just beside ourselves about what is happening? What is this
Right.
behavior going
And
on?
so suddenly,
And so suddenly, now I can look back and know that it wasn't sudden because I can see that all of these little things he had experienced through life are what led up to this moment where I'm like, it's like your pot's getting ready to boil over and you can't see it. And you're chopping onions and you're feeding the dog and you turn around and the pot's like, this is what it was for us. It was like all of these little things that were just kind of making that pot boil up until there was an explosion.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I think, in the same vein, when you're progressing in life, that same thing happens to us too, where we're like, we don't notice our changes until we look back and we're like, oh, wow, everything's different. So I think there's a lot of ways to relate to that. But especially when you have a child, I would imagine you see them every day. So some of the things you just like, you're like, oh, they've always been doing that, or maybe they haven't. And it's very common there. So I don't know how did you panic? I would have panicked.
We panicked.
Okay.
We were full panic mode. I mean, my husband was Googling and watching YouTube videos and we were like, what is going
Right.
on?
Which is that a good thing? Do we feel like that's a good thing now, looking back?
The
To
panic,
have Google, to have all those.
it is and it isn't. I see so many parents that I'm working with now that go down the Google rabbit hole. And it's like,
Mhm.
Dr. Google is their answer. But when they come to me, I realize now that so much information that we're pulling off the internet, Google, AI, whatever the case may be, at this point is maybe not correct or incomplete or not correct for that individual person when we start to really look how it applies. And so I think that it can also feed that panic even more because then you're looking at all the bad news and the gloom and doom and you're like, wah, wah, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like there's no hope.
Yeah, very often when you Doctor Google it, it's not the best case scenario that they start with.
No.
So you're just immediately down a spiral. And that's kind of why I asked, because I think it's the first thing that everyone does when something's wrong. And as good as it is to have information at your fingertips, it can also, like you said, fuel that panic and and that's not healthy for you as a person and a mother and trying to take care of someone else. It's not great that it could hurt you in that way as well. Like how what do we do
Okay.
now?
Yeah. So we went to the doctor. The doctor said, oh, it's just an ear infection. We're going to give you some antibiotics. But if nothing changes, come back in a week. So, of course,
It's
like
just
we
an ear
didn't
infection?
just, just an infection, Matt. Come on. It's just an ear infection.
Is this all the same doctor that you went to?
No, it is
Okay.
not. Like, we had moved, we had been to several
Okay.
different doctors, but I will say the child had had chronic ear infections. We had done tons of antibiotics. He had had ear tubes put in. Like, it was a whole thing. So I was like, okay, it's just an ear infection. But when the symptoms of him, jerking and shaking and clapping and didn't subside, we, of course, were even more terrified. So we went back and he's like, oh, it's just, you know what? We're going to call this a neurological tic disorder. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what is a neurological tic disorder? What is happening? He goes, don't worry about it. It's not a reason to worry. It's not a reason to panic. Just ignore it and hopefully he'll grow out of it. But if he doesn't, then come back and we'll give you some medications to try and tamp the symptoms down. But in the meantime, we're going to send you to the neurologist. So, of course, we go home and start Googling, oh my, what is a tic disorder? And it's like, oh, it's the precursor to Tourette's. And Tourette's is genetic. And we're like, dear Lord, how did this child get Tourette's? None of us have Tourette's. Like, what is going on? And our neurologist was even less than helpful because basically, no MRI, no blood work, no nothing. Basically, my son laid on the floor. The neurologist looked at him and goes, I think he just needs a good spanking.
That's really helpful. Yeah.
That was the life shift.
Yeah.
That was the catalyst for me saying, no, that is not helpful. I am not spanking a child who simply just cannot control his bodily movements. Like, that isn't happening.
Were
And
you
I
that
decided to
calm
go.
when you responded?
I just kind of looked at him and I was like, okay, well, okay. And then he's like, make a follow-up appointment for 6 months. And so we walked out of there and I said, nope, I am going to go back to school and relearn everything I thought I knew about health and wellness to try and help this kid, because after eight prescriptions, 10 doctors, nothing was working. I had to make the shift.
Well, yeah. And that's that's a very interesting response from a medical doctor to say something like that. And that's really overwhelming to me that someone would even have the gall to say that. It's not the 1970s when that was a thing. Like, you just spank a kid and that cures everything. And then we learned that that's not maybe the best way. And now he's saying this. I don't know how you didn't just call him all sorts of names to his face.
Well, I thought about it, and that sometimes is my MO, but I think I was so shocked in the moment that that was the solution that I couldn't wrap my mind around it until I got home, and I was like, what in the heck? Like, no, it's not going to happen.
But do you think it was more, after the shock wore off, more of an inspiration or more of like a defeated feeling that like the people we should be relying on for help in these issues should be helping?
I feel like for me, it was absolutely an inspiration
Okay.
because I knew, like, in my mama soul, I knew like something else was going on. And that was not a constructive piece of advice at all. I was like, well, that's not happening. And I'll just say, he does not have a medical license anymore. Not my fault, but he doesn't
But
do that
not
to me anymore.
surprised.
Me neither.
Yeah, no, I asked that because I don't know. I think these are the systems and the institutions that, at least growing up, we were conditioned that these are the answer lies with them.
It is. And I will say that I think for those of us who, 70s, 80s, 90s, like, that is how we were raised. Like, your doctor had the answers. You went to the doctor, they had the answers. You got the pill, you got the shot. They were the ones that you trusted the most. They were the ones who were going to make you better, and they had the answers. And I think that it was really eye-opening for me in this process to see that they didn't all have the answers, and many of them weren't willing to dig deeper, investigate, hold my hand to help us find the answers. It was like, just ignore it.
Do you think any of that is related to fear of any kind of malpractice lawsuit where some of these doctors were just like pushing you off because they don't, or they're just lazy? Or do you think there was anything related to that? Because I know that some people have experienced where the doctor just doesn't want to try something a little outside of the box because they're afraid they're going to get their hand slapped or a lawsuit or something like that.
I have said all along that, like, we can't fault them for what they have been taught in some areas, and so really the conventional
I
approach
can.
Okay,
I'll do it for you.
I'll give you that, thank you. So, a lot of them, what they're taught in medical school is this idea that tic disorders are purely neurological. They're just neurological. And when we look at how conventional medicine is designed, so it's very reductionist, meaning like you have your podiatrist and you have your gastroenterologist and you have your neurologist. They never communicate with each other. They don't talk to each other. It's not like your neurologist and your gastro are like, oh, here's the reasons that this person's
Hmm.
having this anxiety. Their gut's a mess and they're having, all of these issues. And so when we look at it from that reductionist theory that we have all these specialists, neurologists aren't taught about like what's going on in the gut, what's going on with the immune system really. They're really looking at what's simply going on in the nervous system in the brain. And so we also know that what is taught in medical school usually takes 30 years to or what is studied now takes about 30 years to be taught in medical school. So, these new studies that we're seeing in the last 20 years on tics and Tourette's aren't really being taught in medical school yet because somebody has to vet it. Someone has to make sure that, it's reliable data. Someone has to write the textbook. So we're so behind in the medical education in certain areas
Yeah.
because it just wasn't previously looked at this way.
Fair. Well, you are much kinder considering all of the crap that you had to deal with. I think that that's just unacceptable, and it's nice of you to give them that little nudge. But yeah, I think but on the other side, I think there are doctors out there that are very well connected with new research and thinking about these things and really thinking in a holistic way, and will reach out to other more specific like others in their certain practices to kind of figure those out. So there are some out there that I think that are doing it.
Absolutely. There's
Yeah.
there's tons of them out there and more every day. And I have a great support system of colleagues who are out there doing it, you know, the holistic, functional way. But I think like just from that old school mentality when we started out, it was a different place.
All right. Well, I went right to the litigious piece. So, you know me, true American. So, but so you have your fashion degree, you've had years of industry experience there, then you worked in a nonprofit, and now you're like, no, I'm gonna figure out this health and wellness thing so I can help my son. So did you jump 2 feet in, whole body
I
in?
jumped I jumped 2 feet in and I stayed in for several years. So, I really started looking at the functional medicine approach to health and looking at all of these different ways that we could look at the body and look at the health and look at how everything is connected. So, I started out getting a certification from functional diagnostic nutrition, and it was really another big shift for me. And it was this catalyst for, oh my gosh, this is so eye opening that I want to keep learning. And this is where I decided that I was going to go earn my PhD in holistic medicine and holistic nutrition. And, I had looked at, well, can I go to medical school? Do I want to be an MD? And in the back of my head, I really decided that wasn't the place for me because that approach had failed us. And I knew that it was time to try something different. So, I really went the holistic medicine approach, but looking at it from the scientific perspective. So it was a PhD for me.
Yeah. No, I mean that's big too. How old were you, if you don't mind me asking, at the time?
Ooh, 37, 35-ish
Which
as I
is a
started working on it.
yeah, I mean that's a big it's a big lift as someone that's not 20, right? I feel like so many of us that went to college around college, quote unquote, college age, it's just part of the process of growing up. Whereas now this is like intentional approach. And so did you find it difficult to get back in that, or because it was so interesting to you, it was more of like, give me more, give me more?
It was for me, give me more, give me more. And I'll tell you, I had 2 little kids at the time, but it was give me more because it was so much information that I hadn't known before, but it was things that I could start applying with my son, to make shifts and make changes and like really start to connect the dots.
Was it scary to make that first, like, "Oh, I learned this, let's try it," or was that like, "Let's just try everything and see what works"?
I am an experimenter at heart. I am
Okay.
a scientist at heart. And to be honest, I didn't know that when I was a kid that I was a scientist at heart. And I can look back now and think, I can see some connection. But it wasn't until I really got into this on the other side that I was like, oh, I am a scientist at heart. Let's try this. Let's experiment. So, like, for example, I said to one of our doctors, what about diet? Does diet matter? I read on the internet, no, no, no. Oh, no. Diet doesn't matter. He can eat whatever he wants to eat. Diet just does not matter.
That
And
just
then
sounds wrong.
I'm like, let's try this. And so we started doing gluten-free, dairy-free, low sugar. And yes, that was one of the very impactful things for him. There were many, but one of the impactful things. And so now, even now, he's 20 years old. I asked him the other day, like, what do you think is one of the most triggering things for you? And he was like, oh, for me, sugar and gluten and dairy.
Yeah,
So he can
so
tell you diet matters.
yeah. No, I had a friend who has, I guess, if that's the terminology, has Tourette's.
Mhm.
And she was like, this is, I don't want to live with these ticks. It's fine, but I don't want to live with it. And so she did like some biohacking and like got her she checked her DNA and then figured out what supplements she needs and did all these things. And now she has none unless she's in a really, really stressful situation. And you're like, wow, that sounds so quote unquote simple, but very difficult because we're humans and it's hard to break a pattern and change things. But it sounds like you were like, we're going to not fix your son because there's nothing to fix, but rather help him live a better life without some of these ticks and whatnot. True?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really about we couldn't go to a movie without him. He would clear his throat. So it was difficult to like go to a movie, or we'd go to dinner and people would stare at him. And it was like, how can we help this kid live a better life? Whether we can get rid of symptoms, all of them, or, they're more manageable, whatever the case may be. But, when I started out, it was simply to help my son. I wanted to figure out how to help my son. And it wasn't until we got to the other side where we are now that I was like, oh, I can help other people through this process.
Yeah. So as you're starting to, we'll get to that in a second. I was curious, just like as you're starting to build up this knowledge base, all this information's in your head, you're trying stuff, it's working with your son. What are you seeing in yourself that's changing? Because you say you're quite different than before. What do you feel is most significant there?
Yeah, so many things started to change for me. As one, I would say it gave me a greater belief in myself and my ability and capacity to do things, hard things for that matter. So, it's not easy. So, gave me a better belief in myself. But I started making changes too because I didn't want him to have these changes alone. So, like, I took out gluten from my diet. I tested my genetics and, because he had seen so much progress as we started to work through it. I'm like, well, I'm going to work with myself at the same time. I had lifelong anxiety. I mean, lifelong, where I just thought it's part of who I was. I had gone to the health clinic in college and said, "Oh, I'm just having these issues." And they were like, "Oh, you have anxiety. Let me give you some drugs." And of course, that didn't help. And I just chalked it up to this is who I am. I'm anxious. I don't want people looking at me. I'm afraid people are going to kidnap me. Like that was just my personality. When I made these changes for myself, it was absolutely life changing. So, like,
Really?
yeah, like knowing the anxiety is gone and the stress of like people looking at me and feeling like people are going to kidnap me, like all of this like paranoia and anxiety and things that I had experienced my whole life, which I could probably then turn around and blame on all this trauma, really had so much of a basis in the nutrition and the diet and everything that I was doing, environment that I was doing on a daily basis.
Is it weird to meet a new version of yourself?
It's so awesome to meet a new version
Okay.
of yourself, I think, because I think humans are always changing and we can change for the worse or we can change for the better. And I just think it's so cool to like one, watch yourself evolve, but two, watch other people evolve as well.
Do you notice it in the moment, or are you someone that needs like time passes and then you look back like we were talking about and go, "Oh, dang."
I I think it's a little bit of both, but maybe leaning more towards I'm going to look back and be like, "Oh, dang," because I'm one of those people who doesn't celebrate my wins very well, right? Like I don't be like, "Woohoo, I did it." It's like, "Okay, what's next?"
Next.
Got it next. Got to do the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I think I'm more of the latter as well. I think I'm trying now at 44 to celebrate all the little things, like small milestones, big ones, achievements, screw ups, like things like that. I think now I'm kind of in that space, but I'm not really like, I don't notice when things have changed until I'm like way down the road. So I'm not like in the moment, but I'm not also doing what you were doing, which was actually making intentional changes on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I feel like I tell clients all the time because in we're this instant gratification society, right? Like we want it now. We want it yesterday, but it's really critical to realize that all of those small wins end up these big wins at the end. And you have to be able to look back at those small wins and be like, oh, I did this and I did this and I did this. And oh my gosh, that's why I feel so much better today. Or that's why this is so much different today.
Yeah. And I also think that for people that are used to doing really well, I think it's hard to look at the big goal without remembering that you have to take all the tiny steps. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are like, I wish I could do this. And on the surface, you can, but you don't because you're like, oh my God, it's so far away. I can't even imagine getting there. How am I going to get there? But if we do the little small things and break it down into incremental changes over time, we're suddenly on that mountain. But it is really hard to see these big dreams and go, I can do that.
Yeah, I think it is. And some people just get so overwhelmed with the thought that they look at the whole package instead of like, ooh, if I just start here.
Are you do you do that now?
I'm better about it, I will
Okay.
say. Maybe not in every instance, but I'm definitely better about looking at like, okay, how can I make this little tweak or little
And
change?
what's a big goal that right now you're intentionally making little changes to do?
Yeah, my big goal right now is really to help more people with their tics and Tourette's than I am doing right now. It's really to expand that because I see all of these families, these parents in these Facebook groups, on the internet, Googling, and they're looking for solutions. And at some point, I can really see that they do more trauma bonding. So they're talking to other parents that are like, oh, my kid has this, my kid has that, but they're never coming up with solutions. And I'm like, hi, we can help you. We can do
With
these things.
science.
Yeah, we have science that can help
Yeah.
us with that now.
Do you have a number on that? A number of people more than you have now, or a certain percentage that might help you feel successful? Just helping you try to celebrate the wins. Do you have like, I want to help 50% more
Yeah,
by this date?
I would love to help 50% more. So at this point we have helped hundreds, like over the 500 mark all over the world with their tics and Tourette's. But yeah, I mean, I would love to do 5,000. I would
All
love to
right.
do
We're putting it down.
10,000.
I'm putting in the show notes. We're going to come back and hold you to
Yes.
it. Do you have
Let's
a
do it.
deadline?
Okay. I love it.
Yeah, no, I think it's sometimes we're just like, I want to help more. And so that's why I was like, is there a number in your head? Do you have a tracker? Not that that's the final destination, but it is a marker for some of us that don't celebrate ourselves as much as we should. And
Absolutely.
and by you meeting that goal, it just means you've helped that many more people, which fills your cup, I'm
Right.
assuming. Does it drain your
Absolutely.
cup as well?
It can be. It can be draining because I went from one kid with a tic disorder to hundreds of kids with a tic disorder. And, I have parents who are like me. And so because they're like me, they're easily manageable. But we have parents that, get easily overwhelmed. They have a hard time making the adjustments. And so
Yeah.
that can be a little bit stressful because they come to you with your overwhelm. And I'm, more of an empath. So I can feed off of that. But I say there's two types of parents. There's a rip the band-aid off parent like me that's like, we're just going to do it and we're going to make these changes. And then you have the parent that's like, oh, I got to peel it off real slow and we're going to do this real slow. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And you have to consider your kid in that. Are they rip the band-aid off or are they like, oh my gosh, go slow? But yeah, it can be a little bit draining. It's incredibly rewarding, but it's also draining at the same time.
Yeah. I was thinking of this journey that you put yourself on, one to enrich your life, but also to enrich your son's life. At what point in that journey were you like, maybe I should, maybe I can help other people? Like, was there like a impetus for let me venture into that? Because it's one thing if you're learning it all, you know, not fix, help yourself, but also to enrich your son's life. So, was there a moment?
So the moment actually didn't come from me. The moment actually came from a friend, and we were talking, and she was really talking about how much my son had changed and all of the things we had done. And she said, why aren't you helping other people do this? And I was like, I don't know. She was like, you should help other people do this. So then I started to really investigate, like, how many other people are out there dealing with this? So then I started getting in all those Facebook groups and looking at all the stuff. And I was astounded at how many people are struggling with this. And we're all being told the same thing. Ignore it. Just grow
Hmm.
out of it. Maybe we'll give you some
Still?
meds. Oh, yeah. Very, very much still. That's just the common solution is you get diagnosed by the pediatrician. The pediatrician sends you to the neurologist. The neurologist just looks at your kid. It's just observational and says, oh, just ignore it, they'll grow out of it, or we'll give you some meds. But the research on the meds is really disheartening because you have parents who go in there with this hope that they're like, oh, we're going to get these meds and it's going to just take care of everything and it's going to go back to normal. And then you go home and it's like, wah, wah,
Right.
not happening because the meds, it's, Cincinnati Children's Hospital tells us the meds for ticks do not cure ticks. Most of them are prescribed off label. Most of them do not reduce symptoms more than 50%. So your symptoms are still going to be obvious to others. But the best part is that one of the major side effects for people can be uncontrollable body movements. Why are we giving meds with uncontrollable body movement side effects to people with uncontrollable body movements? It makes no
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. That's really challenging. Or you
It
give
is.
them Zyrtec and they get 1,000 times worse.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's terrible. Was your son's story and your quote unquote success with his journey and the way that he's able to live his life now, was that part of the story or part of your organization so that people, was it like a proof of concept? Was it a something that would help other people relate to you in that way other than being like another doctor that they've gone
Yeah.
to?
It absolutely was a relatable thing. And I think it still very much is relatable. I made a Facebook post today that was like, my son turned 20 last week. This is where we were. This is where we are now. And I think it makes it so much more relatable, but that moms can come to me and feel like they have hope and some comfort because I've been through it. But the cool thing is, most of the people on my team that work for me, their kids have been through the program now. And so they can really speak to the fact that doing these things and making these changes makes such a difference in these kids' lives.
Yeah, I think there's something about, again, power of story that helps people trust more. And this is not to say anything, but I think the general public looks at functional medicine or holistic things still with a little bit of, oh, it's woo woo, or it's, like it's kind of like outside the norm, even though it shouldn't be and it really isn't. But at the same time, I think that that's why power of story is so important. And now you have the education to back that up. So that's kind of where that question came from.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I tell people all the time, people hear the word holistic and they think that I'm going to sage them and rub my crystals on them. And it's a whole woo woo thing. And I'm like, let me explain it to you in this way. We are using science. So we're looking at actual data coming from your child's body to connect all of their body systems. We learn in biology in 8th grade that, you have a nervous system and an immune system and a digestive system, but you never are spoken to about how they're connected. And so for us, it's like, okay, we're looking at holistic, we're looking at that whole connection. How are all these systems working together? And I'm not going to rub my crystals on you and sage you. If that's what you wanted, I'm really sorry.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of like a misnomer in a way, or though actually what people believe holistic means, it's not really, they're not like, because of the mainstream news and information like that, it's kind of
For sure.
not releasing what you're actually doing for their brains, I guess. I don't know where that sentence came from, but it certainly was all around the mountain here. Yeah, no, I think that what you're doing is so important because I can imagine how many parents, single parents, married parents, that are so, they're losing their identity as well because they're trying to help their child through whatever's impacting their lives. So it's like you're helping two tiers of people. You're helping the child, but now you're also changing the lives of the parents. Is that kind of how you see your work, or?
You are so right on. And it's such a valid point that we get in the thick of this as parents and you lose your identity because you become you're the caregiver. You're the one in charge of like making the changes and researching and figuring it all out. And there's a graduate study that looks at parents whose kids are diagnosed with a chronic illness. And basically what it says is that 50% of parents studied felt a sense of grief and loss when their child was diagnosed. And for me, the hard part is nobody passed away, nobody died, we didn't lose anything. We still have to make the lunches and go to school and go to soccer practice and figure out how to navigate the chronic illness on top of all of the other things that we're doing. So it really is a valid concept that these parents lose their identity. And what we're doing is helping everybody to get back on track.
And then I guess the grief would be similar to when people are like, well, now they can't do the things that I pictured in my mind's eye when they were born, and their life is going to look different than that picture. But I don't think anyone's picture when a kid is born actually turns out to be true for any parent.
No, absolutely not. And my son, that is part of it because I was like, wow, he's never going to drive and he's 20 and he's driving and he's got a car and he just became the youngest firefighter on the university crew
That's
and
awesome.
he's doing big things. And so, but we had to make all of the changes and the shifts along the way to get him to where he is now.
Yeah. And I mean, now you're transitioning into this, we'll just use the common term of empty nester in a way, right? And so that's a different identity. Are you handling that well?
I'm excited.
Okay.
I really am because I feel like I feel like there's so much adventure still to be had. I'm young and healthy. And, if my kids are available for adventure and I want to take them with me, I can. But at this point, I can take my husband and my dog and do what I want.
Yeah.
Because with my business, I can work from anywhere.
Yeah, that's nice. And what made you write the book?
So I wrote the book because I wanted parents to have a completely different perspective on tics and Tourette's. And I wanted it to be something that was easy for them to consume because I could have given them a textbook, but they're already overwhelmed. They don't have
Right.
time to sit down and read
Right.
700 pages of scientific data when I can say, I'm a mom. This is my experience. This is what we're doing now. We're helping all of you get your kids back on track.
Yeah. So was that before or after you started your company?
I wrote the book after I started my company.
Okay. So you just saw that there was even more of a need for that. I mean, it's great research, right? I feel like it's good target audience research with your
It absolutely was.
with your organization. I'm always curious with these conversations. I have the same kind of question. And I'm wondering, like, this version of you, which just seems like you are filling your cup as often as you can with things that light you up. If you could talk to the Piper that walked out after that neurologist said that all your son needed was a good spanking, is there anything you would want to tell to her who was shell shocked as walking out that office door?
Say, girl, there is hope out there. You can do it. It's not going to be an easy road. It's going to be stressful. Sometimes you are going to cry. Sometimes you are going to hide in your closet. But at the end of the road, you are going to be a brand new person and your son is going to be thriving. And you can go out there and kick butt and do all of these things because you can do hard things.
Yeah. And it sounded like when you mentioned when you walked out, you've left inspired. So it feels like that Piper would listen to you. Do you think so?
I definitely think that Piper would listen to me because, and I think the inspiration came from a place of hopelessness, really. It was like, what do
Interesting.
we do now? Like, there's no hope. Okay. When there's no hope, I'm going to figure it out for myself. I'll just
Right.
do it myself.
Because you did as a kid too. Everything
Yeah.
that you were doing was to prove that you could do it yourself or to make you feel better because you could do it by yourself and didn't have to rely on other people. So I think you have that ingrained quality of like,
Sure.
I can figure this out,
Yeah.
like, and you did, you crushed it. And now you're just helping so many people and the ripple effect that has too is immense.
Well, and yeah, and I think that's part of it is true. And, one of the reasons that I read the book, so it can start people on a journey. But I'm also so passionate about teaching other practitioners and providers out there. And I do think that my story backs that experience up now that we've had, 14 years of experience is when I go to these events and I'm teaching and I'm talking to other providers and practitioners. I was just at a convention this weekend and someone said, "What do you do?" And I told them, and she was like, "I didn't know you could do anything about tickets and Tourette's." And I was like, so this is where this misconception comes from. And it's really about educating the masses. And the more providers we have that do what I do, the better off everyone's going to be.
Yeah, building bridges between the medical communities that are so siloed in a lot of cases. I think it's beautiful. You're changing the world, and it's kind of sounds really big, but also at the same time, you're doing it person by person, right? And family by family. So thank you for what you're doing for the world because it's clearly very important.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So thank you.
So I'm sure there are people listening that have someone in their life that might need your services or might need to read your book or might just want to reach out to you and bother you with to not bother you to tell you their story and how your story resonated with them. Like, so what's the best way to get in your orbit? How do people find Piper and see what all you offer to the world?
Yes. So you can find me on the internet. I'm at regenerating.health, not .com. It's .health. So just regenerating.health. I'm also Regenerating Health on Facebook and Instagram. We have a YouTube channel called Tick Disorder Secrets. We also have a private Facebook group called Tick Disorder Secrets, A Natural Approach, which is a community of parents whose kids are struggling as well. We get in there, we share recipes and
Yeah.
stories and tips and tricks and all
Community.
sorts of things in there. Yeah, and and it
Community
really
is
is
so,
community.
yeah. It's so
So
important when you're
it
facing
is
things that not everyone understands as well. Yeah,
for
no, I
sure.
love that. We'll put all the links for easy access in the show notes. So no worries if you're listening, you didn't have to jot all that down. It will be in the show notes. Just
Right,
open that
faster.
part and just click it. And thank you for just coming on this journey that I call the Life Shift podcast because it just every little one heals a little part of me. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I that was really a very cathartic experience, and I really loved like speaking to you and sharing my story. And when we started, we were like, we don't know where this is going to go, but
Yeah.
it was awesome.
I think it's really important to give voice to our stories. Both you and I did not do that growing up. And I'm sure that for both of us, it shaped us into this version of us or some elements of why we do the things we do or whatever that may come. And so I hope that anyone listening, if you have a story inside of you, which you probably do, but if you have something that you feel shame around or you feel something that's a little overwhelming, put it to words, whether that's writing it or saying it out loud to someone you trust or because for me, so many of the things, and you kind of alluded to this earlier when you were like, your friends were like, how do you say that so easily? When I put some of the stuff that was in my head and in my body for so long out of my mouth in words, everything felt a little bit more palatable. It didn't feel like it was my fault or I should be holding shame. And so I just challenge everyone listening if there's something, share it in some way or get it out of your head into words whether that's writing or listening. Would you agree?
Absolutely, 1,000,000% would agree with that because even if for me, like, even if I go outside and I just speak it out into the air, into the world, there's something healing in that. There's something that gets it out of your head and helps you have a different perspective.
Yeah. I always am like, everything's like a big swirl mess inside my head when I'm thinking of something or stressing about something. And then I'll like write it down or put it in a social media post for the world to read my stress. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess that's not that bad. It sounds much worse swirling around in my head. So I really appreciate you wanting to let it all out. I'm sure you've said a lot of these words before, but I hope that some parts of it will help you moving down the line as well, Piper.
Thank you so much for having me. And I like really enjoyed sharing my story and talking to you today.
Well, I
Thank you.
appreciate that. And you would think after 220 episodes, I would know how to end these things, but I still haven't figured that one out. So I would like to say thank you to all of you listening for all of these episodes, all these years. It has been really, truly a joy, and it will continue to be. And I will be back next week with a brand new episode of the Life Shift podcast. Thanks again, Piper.
Thank you.
For more information, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com.